So let's talk a little bit about the viewport itself, right? This big, beautiful box right here, the scene view. What we are looking at right now, we've just got a sphere in the scene, very basic. But the way that it's visibly displayed isn't really showing us much about the object, which, is perfect for us in certain circumstances, but in other circumstances, it'd be nice to see a little more. And so what we have here in the top right of the scene view is basically a shading drop down, right? If you click on this, there's a lot of different options you have access to. Just basically different ways of displaying your geometry that could be helpful to you. So for example, we have smooth wire shaded. Right now we're on smooth shaded, which we can kind of see from the icon here. That's a matching icon right there, baby. It's like a third grade homework problem. Do the icons match? Yes, they do. So we know this is smooth shaded. What is smooth wire shaded? Well, that is going to add the wireframe or polygonal view on top. So it's going to smooth shade your geometry so that it doesn't look super rigid. Because if you look at this geometry itself, this is not a lot of polygonal data, right? This is not a very high def sphere. So it should be really quite sharp in how it appears. But since we are in smooth shaded, what that is doing is applying essentially a false smoothing operation to make it look smoother than it actually is. You can kind of see that with the specular highlight right here. This is just a default specular highlight that exists in our scene. And you can see it's not running over any hard edges like it totally would if that's how this geometry was actually constructed. One thing smooth shaded doesn't fix, though, is this surrounding. You can kind of see here how sharp this geometry appears because the silhouette is not being fabricated in any way. It's merely the normals of the object. And we'll get into normals and all that stuff at a later date. But point is, you've got smooth shaded. This is kind of the default view, or smooth wire shaded is typically how I like to work just to see what's going on. But there's other stuff too. There's flat shaded. And this is all of a sudden where you see that smoothing operation stripped away. This is the raw, ugly truth of your geometry. This is what it looks like, right? You can see each polygon with that real sharp fall off. There's also flatline shaded with, that wire overlay as well, if you want to see that. Or one that you'll use a lot is this wireframe mode that basically strips everything but the polylines that comprise your geometry. There's no polygons blocking our view there. And there's also wireframe ghost, which is very interesting, where it is giving you that wireframe. You can kind of see through the polygons at about 50% opacity. So lots of different ways to operate. Typically, you'll find yourself most likely operating between a smooth shaded view and a wireframe view. And the peeps over at Houdini knew that was going to go down. So all you have to do is, when you're in the scene view here, just press W to activate that ghost wireframe mode, and then W again in order to get back to that smooth shaded wireframe mode. But the same is true of any of these modes, right? If I start in flat shaded without the wireframe and I hit W, I enter that ghost wireframe mode. I hit W again, I go back to what I was previously on. So basically the W key is just a toggle to wireframe from whatever you are currently at. Now, to the right of this, there's this little icon that looks like a sphere surrounded by some ghost geometry, right here. This is going to be very, very handy to you. You're going to use this all the time. Basically, this is visibility through contexts. And what that means is, if I have another geometry here on the OBJ level, let's say I have a box, and I move it over here, and we want to make changes to the internals of the sphere. So if we double click this, now we'll notice the box on the upper level has turned into ghost mode, basically. It is being allowed to exist even when going into this level, just for reference sake, in case you want that. So, for example, if I click and hold on this, I can choose hide other objects. And now, whenever I go inside an object, I just want that object. I want everything else removed from my view so I can work on that independently. But I can just change that and allow the ghost through, or I can change it and let all the solid geometry through. So I'm still seeing the full scope of my scene even while working on the internals of a given geometry. Super handy. And the last thing over here is your actual view layout breakdown, right, in the viewport. For example, let's say we are modeling and we want to see a perspective view, but we also want to see a top view, right, a top orthographic view of our scene. If we come over here, we can choose 4 views, 2 views stacked, 2 views side by side, lots of different combinations of views. Let's do 2 views side by side, for example. That will split our scene. And look, it gives me a top view and a perspective view. But by clicking in any of these boxes and hitting space 2, space 3, space 5, space 4, we can change, again, that orthographic view. We can also do 2 perspective views from different angles. you're totally free to do whatever you want. You know, if I want every view, I want the front, I want the top, I want the side, and then I have my perspective, like that's a great setup. But you can also very quickly toggle between these with control and the different numbers. For example, control 1 will give you 1 split, right? 1 main view in the scene view window. Control 2, you guessed it, that's 2. 3 is 3, 4 is 4. There is no 5. I just tried it, just out of curiosity. It doesn't exist. So this is a real quick way for you to, you know, jump between different setups that you might want for various different operations inside of Houdini. Very, very helpful. So we've got those 3 things, but in true Houdini fashion, there are multiple ways to do this same thing. If you press V while in the scene view, essentially think of it as like short for view, you can change your view settings. You can change the viewport layout right here by just dragging over and then selecting the one you want, or you can change the shading modes right here as well. There's also some selection options over here, you know, to what we were talking about earlier. For example, if you wanted to do box or lasso selection, only selecting visible geometry like we looked at earlier, and other options there too. So this radial menu is there if you want it. I don't personally use it, but again, nice to know that it's there at least. Now, continuing on the theme of the viewport, right? There is the right-hand side of the scene view. And this has a lot of very helpful little buttons that we can use. And we'll go ahead and explore that now. I'm going to highlight and delete this box. We've got our sphere back. I'm going to go ahead and switch to smooth shaded mode. In fact, I'll go to smooth wire shaded mode. I like this one more. And let's go ahead and just do this one a little different. I'll just take a tour down the right-hand side to the most important nodes. So right at the very top, we have a display reference grid, right? This is the world plane's ground zero, so to speak. And we can see that here, you know, if we navigate over, we can see some helpful information. Essentially our world scale in grid form. Houdini works in meters. So if you see -1, just know that is -1 meter in length from the center of the world. I'm going to get rid of that sphere here, but we can see the 0 here, -1, +1, and this is on the, let me actually rotate it this way. This is a little easier to see. In fact, I'll spacebar and go to the top view for a perfect view of this. So at the center of our world, we have 0, 0, 0, right? It is the 0 of the x-axis, of the z-axis, and of the, from the top view we can't see it, but the y-axis. This one, up and down. If I go to the side view, I'll go to the front view, we can see, yeah, a 0 in green as well. That's the y-axis. So popping back to the top view here, this is all in meters. This is 1 meter positive, 1 meter negative on the x. And you can also see this helpful little handle at the bottom left of the scene view that is showing you in real time as you navigate around which direction is x, y, and z. The direction of the line itself is the positive x, y, and z. So just know that if you are aiming the other way from that line direction, that is the negative of x, y, and z. Now, there are situations where you may want to get rid of this ground plane. For example, you know, there are some times where we're working below the ground plane and I'm looking at my geometry and I'm navigating around. I've got this floating thing here that's just kind of in my way. By just clicking this, we can remove it from the scene entirely. And now you get this, you know, this eternal wonderland of gridless space. It's pretty beautiful. We can turn that back on very easily, just toggling it. And then you may notice that there's a little black arrow at the bottom right of this icon, again, indicating that if we click and hold, there are other parameters that we can activate for this visualizer. Here we have ruler on the main axes, right? This is where we're seeing just that center line have the negative and positive numbers. But let's say we're working over here. I don't want to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I just want to know what this distance is. So if I click and hold on this, I can actually choose ruler on grid points. And now I've actually got the negative values right there. I know this is -3 on the x and -3 on the y. So that's nice that you can toggle on. You can also obviously toggle everything off if you just want the grid for reference of where the ground should be in your scene. That's nice too. So I'm going to reset this, turn it off. Let's continue down. The next thing of import is this lock button. This is lock camera to view. So let's create a camera. We can hit tab and type in camera for now. We'll create that. And then if we navigate up here next to the perspective dropdown that we looked at where we can set all our different views, to the right of that we have no cam. This is where we can select our camera. You can see cam 1, the same naming convention. If I change this to cam 12 or whatever, then I'll see that's updated there. So if I click this, we are now looking through our camera. Now, we're not seeing anything because the camera defaults, if you create it with the tab menu, to 0, 0, 0, the center point of our world. But let's say we want to move it. Well, we can move it with this, as you might expect. But this is like, this sucks. I hate this. I don't want to do that. So let's actually reset to 0, 0, 0. And let's say I want to move this just like I would be, you know, moving my scene. If I want to rotate my scene around and get a good view, this is the best way to do it. So if I want to set up my camera the same way, how would I do that? Well, this lock is one way to do that. If I go ahead and look through the camera and turn on the lock, now whenever I navigate as I normally would in Houdini, you see this letterbox stays there. This has to do with the aspect ratio of the camera settings, which we can look at later as well. But simply by roaming around and scrolling and zooming as I normally would, now I'm actually positioning my camera. If I turn this off and I zoom out, you see the camera now stays. Whereas if I'm in there, I lock it, and now I zoom out, the camera moves with me. I'll unlock it, I'll zoom out again, and the camera's now in its new position. In this way, we can position our camera very freely. You will be toggling this a lot. There is a very real danger of forgetting this is on. Me warning you now will not save either of us in the future. We're going to make that mistake, and it's okay. But just remember, turn it on when you need it, and then as soon as you're done, turn it off so it doesn't cause you any more problems. Continuing down, we have the lighting section right here. All of these pertain to the exact same thing. If I have a light in my scene, I'm going to create a little light here. And in fact, I'll just move this over. This is the little shortcut command window, so you guys can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to zoom up. I want to put this back on the 0 of the ground plane. In fact, I'll put it 0.5, so it's kind of sitting on the ground here. I also want to create a grid. This is going to basically give me a ground plane. And then this light, I'm going to lift it up above my scene, right? So what we've got is a point light above a sphere above a ground plane. And in that way, we are getting some light play. Now, it's not high quality. It's not like, you know, what you'd see in a final render, but it's giving us some idea of how the light is impacting our scene, right? We're getting that fall off of light, you know, as ghetto as it looks, and we're getting light cast on the surface of the ground as well. But we can change this, right? We can just toggle between these. Essentially, the very bottom here is disable lighting. This is not disabling your lighting in your scene for the render. It has nothing to do with that. I want you to separate those things in your mind. This all pertains, all down this side, only to what we are seeing in the viewport. It's all temporary. It's all just servicing us building the scene, and that's it. It doesn't go any further than that. So if we toggle disable lighting now, we've got no lighting. If we are also in smooth shaded mode, well, now we can't see a gosh darn thing. We have no dimensionality. So this is actually probably a better view of this. This is no lighting in the scene. We can then choose the headlight only. This will generate a temporary headlight in our scene that is tethered to where our view is. And you can kind of see that in the specular here on the sphere itself. Wherever we move, that specular exists because that headlight is essentially attached to our perspective of the scene. So in that way, you get consistent lighting, but we still get that dimensionality, right? That shadow that will separate objects in our perspective. That is very helpful when we're working with scenes. If you want to up it to the next level, you can enter normal lighting, and that's where we started, essentially. Again, these all have little buttons, so we can enable or disable the specular highlight, for example, from that light. We can enable and disable the diffuse itself. Like, we can customize each of these lighting setups in whatever way we want. There's a lot of flexibility in the scene view. We can also elevate and go to high-quality lighting. Now, it's a minor difference here, right? You're basically seeing like a slight shift in the specular. Of which we can also turn on and off. But like, there's other stuff too. Depth of field, bloom, like there's a lot of other things that we now have access to further build out our temporary view of what it is that we're building. But there's also high quality lighting with shadows. Ooh, now look what we got. Now we've got it casting our hard shadow. If we change the light type to a light here with a little more area to it, right? Let's say we choose a disc instead. We rotate it, you know, I'll do -90 degrees so it's facing right down. Well, now look, we got like really nice shadows in this scene for the most part. Now, what you might have is point shadows right out the gate. That means no matter what the light source is, you are going to have these hard shadows. But the reality is, a quick lesson on light is the larger the source of light is, that is being cast on your object, the softer your shadows are, because the light is hitting it from more areas. So whereas one part of the light is casting a ray that is creating a hard shadow, the other part of the light is actually on the other side of the object and is filling in part of that hard shadow. So instead you get like a fall off. So an area this big, if I instead want to see what this really looks like, I can do area shadows, and it'll take all that area of the light into account. You can see how much softer that shadow is now.
If you enjoyed this video and you want to learn more, head to doublejumpacademy.com/Jordan for the full course. Links in the description. You're just a click away. Click it.